Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we have a new series that we're going to dive into. So, we're going to dive into the Ruthless Kings Series, and it's by Michelle St. James, and the first book in this series is called Ruthless. We meet Angelica, who's a recent philosophy grad. She works at a coffee shop called the Muddy Cup. She's worked there since before her last year of college. So she had gone early to do her errands, and she had felt like someone was watching her, but she didn't see anyone. But after her shift, that feeling had pretty much faded. So before she left, she got a call from her brother David asking about their dad. Neither had heard from him, and apparently this had become the norm since David had come out to his dad. And his dad was like old school Italian and wouldn't accept it. So her brother tells her, she needs to get a real job. And she says she's just figuring things out right now. So she goes to lock the door and she feels a gun pressed to her temple. The voice said, "Move and you're dead." And then she felt a pinch in her neck. Someone put a bag over her head, and then everything went black. Nico Fatale is at church, and he is the current underboss of New York of the Vitale family. He gets tapped on his shoulder and told by Dante, "We got the girl." Nico tells him, "Do not hurt her," which Dante was like, "Why do you care?" And Nico just let him know that he wasn't trying to do things the old way, but things were necessary since his parents were taken out about 2 years ago at the restaurant where they had gotten engaged 30 years prior. So they were on their anniversary dinner when they got taken out. So he clearly wants to avenge their demise. So Angelica wakes up with a massive headache, a sight a little blurry. She realizes she's in a dark room. There's no windows. Only her phone has been taken. They let her keep her purse and everything else. So she, of course, is trying to think of a way out and at the same time figure out why she's here. The door opens up. A man comes through with eyes so dark they look black, and he slaps her. Then he shoves a paper bag at her and says, "Here, bitch." Then he tells her that he's going to do to her. He tells her, he's like, "I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do to you beforehand so maybe you can enjoy it." So he gets right up in her face, and then she hears someone from behind him yell, "Dante, what are you doing?" He says, "Just following orders." And the guy says, "It doesn't take that long to give a sandwich." So then Dante was like, "This bitch isn't worth it anyway, Luca." He walks out. He leaves Luca in the room with Angelica. He comes over to her and tells her, "Eat your sandwich, keep your strength up," and then he leaves. So once they leave, she finally lets out a breath. She didn't even realize she was holding it. So they feed her morning, noon, and night. So they give her a cold burger, hot dogs, even spaghetti. But by the second day, she decided to stop eating. She wanted answers, and she figured this was the way to get them. Starve herself. So we find out that her father is rich, and she thinks she's being held for ransom. She's confident her father's going to pay it. And even though he's been like an absentee type of father. So she's a loner. And she has been since her mom passed away. And she starts wondering, will people even realize she's missing? Because she only had one real friend named Lauren from college. So then Luca comes in the room and says, "You're still not eating, I see." And she says, "I'm not going to unless I get some answers." And he was like, "You're just making it harder on yourself. The boss isn't going to like this." So she says, "Who, Dante?" And Luca was like, "The boss makes him look like nothing." So she basically wasn't going to budge on her stance. No reason, no eating. So Nico's sparring with the guy in his organization named Marco. He wins. We learn a little bit about the organization and how he's trying to bring it current. So there are still illegal aspects to the organization because it says the mob. But he does have a legit business as well. It's a little bit more tech driven, and he tries to keep everything under one house, like literally his residence, so that way it's harder for the feds to get warrants on residences. So Luca comes to see him about a recent complaint on Dante, who apparently has been getting in a lot of trouble lately when it comes to women. Nico tells Luca, deal with him. So then Luca tells him about Angelica and that she's now gone 5 days without eating. So they have a conversation about the father possibly leaving her there. And they was like, damn, that's just so cold. So Nico's like, I'll go deal with her. So Nico goes to see her. And even though she wanted to be mad and show she wasn't scared, he got to her. He was nothing like she expected. He spoke like the men like from her private school. So she, of course, was like, your men drugged me. They kidnapped me and threw me in here. And he said, no, they didn't have that done. I did it. And he told her she had to follow the same rules as everyone else, and that included doing what she was told, which was to eat. And she was like, why should I eat if you're going to take me out anyway? And he was like, I don't plan on doing that, but I better get what I want. So he even brought up possibly nabbing David, her brother. So then she agreed to eat because she didn't want anything to happen to her brother. And while she's looking at him, because he's an attractive man, she like has this like fantasy about him. And then she tried to like kind of check herself. So before Nico left, he told her his name and that he can either be her greatest ally or her worst enemy. So the next morning, Nico goes for a run. He can't get Angelica out of his head. The pics from the surveillance apparently hadn't done her justice. She has like this long blonde wavy hair to her waist, nice curves. But it was her eyes that did him in. It was like this loneliness that he felt. He saw it in her eyes as well. So we find out why he's holding her. He wants the footage showing the assassination of his parents, which would incriminate Carlo Rossi, her father. He wasn't supposed to kidnap her, and if this goes left, he's facing some major issues with the families, the syndicate. So he decides he isn't going to be mean to the girl, as it's not her fault that her father's a bastard. So 2 days have passed since Nico came to visit her, and she's been thinking about him a lot as well. So she thinks it's because she's been sex deprived, as she hasn't had a boyfriend since her junior year. So Luca comes in the room, and she thinks he's dropping off more food for her to turn down, but she notices he doesn't have anything. He tells her, we're going somewhere. So then she's like, are you going to off me? And he's like, no one's going to off you. He says, we're going for a ride. And she's like, no at first. But then he told her, either you go willingly or we'll do the pillowcase and drugging again. So she agreed to go. But he told her she would still have to have the pillowcase on her head once they left the building. So he told her to trust him. And she was like, why should I? And he said, because I've kept Dante away from you. So she was thinking about running, but she decided against it. She gets in the car, hears Dante's voice, she freezes up. So she asks Luca if he's, going to leave her, and he says no, everything will be fine. So they go to this large building, and before she goes inside, Luca and Dante get into it, and she also sees Dante's face, which is all like bruised, and he has like this, massive black eye. So just Luca and Angelica get in the elevator and go up to the penthouse. Luca tells her that he'll be back to get her later. So she walks inside and Nico's there and she's like, why am I here? And he says, because I want you to be, and that's all you need to know. He tells her she can go take a shower. He has some clothes, laid out for her to go put on. So she goes, she takes a bath, and we find out that, which we actually found out earlier, that Nico doesn't like to really use weapons. That's the reason why he likes to spar and things like that. He really doesn't like that type of combat. At first she says nothing was going to change. She wasn't eating. So he tells her it will take you 3 months to die from starvation, and it's very painful. And he thinks that she will know, he thinks she's going to know where her father's hiding. So he agrees to a deal with her. If he answers her questions, she'll eat. And then he adds to it, and he wants to do basically question for a question. And she agrees. So they eat and ask these different questions. And so he asks about her mother. She asks, why was he keeping her? And he told her, because your father has something I want. She asked if it was money. And he said no. And he asked her how was her relationship with her father. And she basically stated that he was distant, sent them off to boarding school. And just it wasn't a close relationship. Sometimes they may have taken holiday together, but it's not a close relationship. So he barely even had them for summer. So she finishes her food, takes her plate to the kitchen, and he comes in behind her, and she can feel him. So he starts to kiss her collarbone, and then he kisses her with such aggression and anger. And so she tells him to stop because she feels like she's about to cave and tells him she's ready to go. So he stops, and he says, I'll call Luca to come get you. She leaves and gets in the elevator, and it's already set for B. So I think he can like control it from inside his penthouse. So then she gets down to the basement, and Dante is the only one waiting for her. So he pushes her in the van and tells her he doesn't like sloppy seconds, but he'll make an exemption this one time. They get back to the room. He shoves her in, of course, and because her head had been covered by the pillowcase. And he was about to attack her when she said, Nico will be pissed if something happens to me. And she told him that Nico had told her that she was important in him getting what he wanted. So this backed off Dante, but he told her that once everything was done, he would have something for her. The next day, Nico goes down and he takes the breakfast tray from Luca, and he's like, I'll serve her. So he goes into her, and she makes a comment to him, oh, so you all like to share. He, of course, is like, I don't know what you're talking about, explain. So she told him what happened the day before with Dante. He flew out of that room, went to the gym, punched Dante until the dude stopped moving. He didn't take him out, but he beat him to a pulp. And he told Luca, take out the trash, take away his access immediately from everything. He told him, make sure you let everyone know he isn't part of the Vitale family anymore. So the next day, she has been sent like new clothes, even some new undergarments. Luca brings her Thai food, tells her that Nico, really isn't a bad guy, and that he himself would gladly give his own life for him. And he viewed him as a brother. And she's kind of looking at him like, how do you expect me to think that way of him? He's holding me hostage. And then at the same time, she's kind of like, well, why would Nico care about what she thought of him? And Luca was like, well, he does for whatever reason. He does care. So then he leaves, and a few minutes later, Nico comes in, and he basically was like, we need answers about your father. So everything gets spilled, okay? She rants about only seeing him, like, I don't know anything. I only see him ever so often. And since I graduated, they haven't, really talked that much at all. Better yet, spend time together. So he calls Luca, and he brings in the newspaper articles that show Carlo Rossi. And she's like, my father's name is Carlo Bondsman, and she's just like mine and my brother's. And Nico says, look closer. Sure enough, it's her father. She has a freak out, of course. He explains that the father is the head of the Boston Syndicate and used his mother's maiden name to protect them. That's wild. I mean, it's smart, but that's absolutely wild. So he leaves her, and she reads all of the articles. She didn't eat, but it wasn't because she was in protest. It was just that she had no appetite after learning all this information about her father. So Nico tells Luca, have her meet him at the gardens, make sure it's clear later that night. So she has been like mind fucked and just feels as if her whole life was a total lie. So Luca tells her Nico wants to see you, and she tells him there's no point in the pillowcase anymore. If I tell on Nico, I tell on my father. So she's like, we don't need to do that anymore. So he was like, all right, but don't try anything. And she didn't. I think she even heard like some business, like a woman talking on the phone, talking about, giving to charity and how he wanted this amount to go to this charity, which was like shocking to her. She's like, he's a mob boss. Like, why does he want to give the charity? So they get outside. She knows she's in Brooklyn, which shocked her because she was like, there's so many hipsters in Brooklyn now. But I think that's probably like the whole thing of being probably in the open, what better way kind of to hide but be in the open, so it doesn't look like you're doing anything illegal. So Luca gave her a jacket that was like too big for her, but it smelled just like Nico, and the girl couldn't help but sniff it. So they get to the park. He tells her he'll find you, and he does. They walk a little in silence, and he asks her, did you really not know? And she said, I really didn't. They walk in silence for a little bit more. He picks some flowers. She says, that there's rules against that. And he's like, I have no problem breaking rules. So they get near a bench, and he rubbed his thumb on the bottom of her lip, and then he just crashed her lips. And at first she tried to protest, but she just gave in because she wanted him. So he sat her down on the bench, and he told her he just had to taste her. And so he started kissing her leg and then up her thigh and then to the motherland. And she was about to come just from him kissing on her thighs. So she came hard, of course, and then she reached and went in his pants, took out his cock, and he told her, I need you to tell me you want this angel. So he has now named her Angel. It's so cute. But then she freaked out and was like, I'm sorry, we shouldn't do this. This is a mistake. And so he just put his dick back in his pants and told her he would call for Luca to come and get her. And she left. But boy, did she want to stay. Luca met his uncle Carmine, who was the consigliere. I think I said it right. And apparently he was supposed to be the underboss, but Luca's father changed his mind and made Nico the underboss. So he was telling Luca that telling Nico that he had the girl for over a week, and at this point he's going to have to start sending fingers or something showing that they were serious, about this threat. So Luca in his mind was freaking out because he didn't want to do any harm to Angel. After the meeting with Carmine, he goes to his hotel room in the city where he meets up with because he's like, I got to get Angel out of my head. And I'm like, dude, you have named the woman Angel. She's not going anywhere, okay? Doesn't matter how many people you screw, that she's not going anywhere. So he starts to rub on the woman, and his dick does get hard, and then he tells her to straddle him, but she doesn't smell like Angel, and so he pushes the woman off of him. And she was like, what did I do wrong? And he's like, nothing. I'll make sure you get paid and tell him I was satisfied. Just go. He knew he was fucked. So Angelica, aka Angel, was pacing back and forth and freaking out about what happened and how she needed to distance herself from both her father and Nico when this was all over. Then she hears gunshots and footsteps that are coming towards her. Men dressed in all black bust in and grab her and tell her her father has sent for her. Nico heard the gunshots. Luca bursts into the office, and Nico's like, why aren't you with Angel? And this was the first time that he had said that name to Luca. So he told him, he sent 2 men down there and he was coming for him because he knew he would be the next target once they got the girl. So Nico was like, she's better off with us than her father. He's left her here for over a week. He doesn't care anything about her. Now we're going to get Angel. And he's like, I'm not discussing this any further. So they head down to the basement. They start taking the guys out one by one. One of the masked men had a gun pointed to Angelica's head, which lets you know, I'm sitting there going, this can't be Ross, her dad's Rossi's men. And this is exactly what Nico thought as well. So Luca finally Nico got a clear shot and took out the guy that had the gun to Angelica's head. Before he took him out, the guy even said, he made a comment that was like, I'll take her out if I have to, which again doesn't make sense. If she's the reason you came here, that doesn't make sense. So she was pissed because she thought her father had sent for her and sent these men to rescue her, and it's a bust. They go up to his office, and she, of course, is still under that notion that her father sent the men for her. So Nico said, you aren't as smart as you look. And this stung, but when she was thinking, it was like she washed her face and she's thinking, and she's like, you know what? That doesn't make sense. Like, why was the guy so sure that I wouldn't hurt her? So she took some aspirin from his cabinet, and then he told her it's time to go. They get downstairs, and all of whom she thinks are her father's men's bodies are gone. So they get in the vehicle, and she asks again, like, where are we going? And he says, somewhere no one will find us. And she thought to herself she should be scared, but she wasn't. So they end up on the coast. They head up the coast to Bass Harbor, Maine, and meet a guy named Ed, who clearly is the caretaker. As he said, him and Martha had stocked the house up, and there was a storm coming in a couple days, so you two are going to have to ride it out. So they get on the boat and with Ed, and they head to the island where the house is on a cliff. It's a nice big house, and he tells her she can get whatever she wants in the kitchen, and he'll see her at dinner. So he says, I need to go regroup and figure out what happened at the house, and headquarters is what he calls it, and he goes into his office. So he had shown her where her room was. She went in, she fell asleep. So he, of course, was going back and forth about, what everything had meant. So he called Luca to talk to him, but he didn't call his Uncle Carmine, as he was in no mood to hear, like, I told you so. So he dozed off for what seemed like a few minutes, and then he heard small footsteps, and he called out Angel, and she was like, I thought I heard thunder. So he told her to come in, and he let her call David. And he, of course, was like, I can trust you not to put him in danger. And she was like, I never would. So she told David that she was in Cancun with a friend named Rachel, having a winter break, drinking margaritas. And he seemed to buy it. Hell, even Nico almost bought it because she was so convincing. So then they go downstairs and they have dinner. So they eat, and she asks, how long have you had this place? He says about 2 years. And she doesn't think it fits him, but he tells her, this feels more like home than the city. So she wants to know, like, what it is that he wants from her father. He tells her he doesn't want to hurt her with the answer. So she calls bullshit and thinks it's all about money. And she goes on this whole rant. And then he drops the bomb on her. And she, of course, was like, you're a liar. My father would never do that. And he told her, your father was one of the gunmen, and he has the tape of whoever the second guy was as well. She goes ballistic, still doesn't believe, and yet feels this massive attraction to him. This has got to be so fucked up to be so attracted to somebody, and then they're telling you, like, the things they're telling you are just, like, ripping you apart, because I feel like a part of her knows, after reading all of those articles, this is definitely a possibility that this could be true. He comes over to her and she says, I hate you. He just says, I know. He starts kissing her, and when he lets go, she says it again, I hate you. He says, I know. He scoops her up, takes her to his room. He undresses her, and then he keeps kissing her and goes down her body with kisses. He eats her pussy, and she's going mad, of course. He comes up and tells her, I want to be inside you, but you have to tell me you want me. I like how he talks. I really do. So she tells him, I want you, but she doesn't look at him. And he's like, I want you to look at me and say it. And so she does. So she puts on the condom. He goes inside her, and of course, it was incredible. Afterwards, she just lays on his chest. She gets up the next morning, goes to the living room, and he comes in and puts his hand on her shoulders, and she's freezing. And he tells her, let me get you warm. So before that, he had told her, we don't have to talk about it. I just want to be with you while we're here. He takes her upstairs, gives her a warm bath, and then says, I'll make you breakfast. They have breakfast. He tells her how beautiful she is, and she's like, don't do that. That's not what this is. It can never be. So then he takes her for a walk, and they were about to fuck outside in the cold rain, but he was like, no, not out here. And then she said, well, then take me to a bed. They barely made it in the foyer, and then he boned her. They talk afterwards, and he was like, I don't know what's happening, but you can't deny that something is. She's not ready to admit it, and so she just kind of like, let's just be together while we're here. So they keep having great sex. The lights were out from the storm, and he went in to check and see if the lines were back up, and the phone lines were back up, and they were. And he called Luca, said, I'm not going to bring her back until it's safe. She overhears the conversation, and then he tells her, we're going to leave tomorrow. So she asks questions about her father and wants the proof, and he says he can get it, and that he knows one of his men helped her father, and that's why he needs the tape. So she was like, why would he keep the tape that incriminates him? And he's like, to hold it over the head of whoever helped him. So they go back and forth, and he tells her that the men were clearly given an order to get her dead or alive. She couldn't believe it, and then she asks to go to get the information from her father herself, and he's like, nope, that's not gonna work, and she's thinking that she can convict, because she's still under the notion that who she knows as her father is her father, even though she's read all this stuff. She knows the stuff that her father is in. He's a whole mob boss. She's still stuck under that notion, because you got to remember, that's all she really knows. She read all these articles, but you got to understand, she's known this man her whole life. That's not who she knows. So she still thinks she can reason with him and she can get the information. And he just basically told her, nope, you're only safe when you're with me. and that's how I'm gonna keep it. So they leave and go to his house in I think it's Hudson Valley. And Luke and the security detail are there. Luca tells him he's triple checked the security, then asks where to put their bags. Nico says, my room. There was like this flick of surprise on Luca's face, but it passed quickly. And Nico didn't care anyway, because he's like, I do what I want. So they go upstairs, and when they go in the room, she was like, you can't order me around and just because we slept together. And he tells her, I do own you, and you own me too. He kisses her hard, and then he tells her to take a bath, and he'll see her for dinner. So she looked around. He had clothes for her, like beautiful dresses, all types of clothing. And she picked out a beautiful dress, went downstairs, and she heard men's voices, and she went to that room. And he, of course, sensed her, and he's like, come in, Angel. So then Luca said, hi, Angel. And they talked for a few minutes and then went to the dining room, and they had dinner. Nico, I don't know why I want to say Luca, but Nico and Angel. So he even had a chef. So she ate, and then he took her upstairs and put her in bed. She fell asleep. Next morning, she wakes up, empty bed, and she takes a walk outside. Nico comes to her. He knew her thoughts before she'd even asked the question. He's like, you want to know what I do? Exactly. And so he says, basically the old business consisted of, the whole prostitution, having people pay for protection and, all kind of stuff. And he's, of course, trying to get away from that side of the building. So, yes, he does hacking, okay? Some other cyber things. But he's just trying to move them forward. So, probably more so that eventually they can become, like, just a legit business. That's going to take a long time to do it, but he's just kind of putting in the steps to get them to that place. Now her father and his father, he told her, they were the old ways. So, they dealt with all that stuff, that grimy stuff. That's what they knew and that's what they did. Carmine comes to visit, tells him that the syndicate and I think it's Raniero, are not happy about what has happened. And he tells him that, he has to act now. And Nico tells him, I'm not going to hurt her and I'm not going to allow anyone else to hurt her. So Carmine was like, oh, so it's like that. And Nico said, yes, it is. So Carmine was like, I have advised you, but the decision falls to you. So Nico apologizes for losing his temper and asks him to stay the night. But Carmine was like, no, my wife hates for me to be out late. And he leaves. Angel heard the convo with him. And when Carmine left, she went into his office. They started kissing, and he was like, I need to be inside you. And she's like, nope. She took off his pants, and she gave him a blowjob, which absolutely drove him crazy. And then he was like, I need to be inside you. And she was like, where's the condom? It was in his wallet. She gets up, goes and gets it. And then she sits on it, and they have a great fuck session. So he told her she was his, and in her mind, she was like, I am and always have been, but she still couldn't say it. They woke up to muffled pop sounds. Luca came in the room and said, we've been breached. They get dressed, and Luca gave Nico a gun and told Angel stay between the two of them. So they get downstairs. He tells Luca, get Angel to the car. He'll be there soon. So Luca takes her and gets in, and then Nico gets in a gunfight. He gets shot in the thigh. He shoots one of the men, and then he sees Dante. He finally gets to the car, and he tells Luca, I'll call you. So they head to the front gate. They see Rossi's men with semi-automatic weapons, so he backs up, takes a backup route through the backwoods, head for the airport in Newburgh. They go to Rome, which is where Raniero is, and she felt crazy because she liked the idea of being his woman, but yet this is the same person that kidnapped her. And she also felt bad about not knowing a lot about her heritage because she is Italian, but she doesn't speak it, and she's not familiar with anything. She never really looked into it. So they go sightseeing in Rome, and when they get back to the suite, Luca's there. She threw her arms around Luca and was just like, thank God you're okay. So Nico was going to speak with Raniero, and Luca was going to take her shopping. This pissed her off because she wanted to go because she wants more information. But they let her know, Raniero's not going to see you. You haven't been cleared. It's not happening. So finally she caves. She goes shopping. They get to La Perla, which is like expensive lingerie. And tells him, she can try the stuff on by herself. He's like, I have to protect you. And she's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean you have to be in here with me. So he's like, all right. So he goes in the waiting area. She looks back. She sees the exit sign in Italian. I forget how it was spelled and pronounced. And she pauses, but she goes through that door and she makes a run for it. Nico goes to see Donati Raniero, and he, of course, says, things are unstable. And they have their back and forth, and he asks him, why does he still have the girl? And he says, I love her. And Raniero was like, what is the end game? And he said, well, hopefully get the proof, turn in Rossi, and hope she forgives me. He gives him a piece of paper that says, tell him what you know from RD. And told him to take it to Pharrell Black in London, and gave him the address. He leaves, gets back to the suite. Luca's like, she's gone. She was walking the streets around Rome. She was going back and forth in her head, and she finally decided she didn't want to leave Nico. She goes back to the hotel suite. She was met with daggers from Luca because he was pissed. And Nico was just sitting in the chair, and he just said, you came back. And they had this intense fuck session where they both, finally said, I love you to each other. So before they go to Pharrell Black's club in London, Angel makes Luca talk to her because she hated that he was so upset with her. And she apologizes. And when he asks, why did you come back? She says, because I love him. And that made Luca okay with her again. And so he told her, if you leave, just don't do it that way. He was really messed up. So they get dressed up. They go to Pharrell. Oh, and he also told her like a story. Actually, I think it was like when they were going shopping. He had told her a story about, why he was so loyal and why he, had such great respect, would lay down his life for Nico. Because he came from a broken home. Mother was a drug addict. Just an awful experience. He was homeless. And Nico took him in, and really gave him a shot. And, it saved his life. And so he's just been forever indebted to him. They go to Pharrell Black's club. Nico shows him the note. And he gives him the address of Carla Rossi's safe house. So they go back to the suite. She, of course, is like, I'm going, Well, first she asked him, are you going to take out my father? And he said, I just want to get proof. And I'm turning him over. He really didn't want to take him out. That's not what he was trying to do. They go back and forth because she also wants to come along. He's like, no way. I don't know how this is going to go down. It's not safe. No. Well, old girl is going anyway. So she waits about 30 minutes after they leave, and then she calls a cab. So there was some money that was left on the nightstand, and she took that to pay for the cab. So she gets to the house, and all she sees, because she had saw the address when he gotten that piece of paper from Pharrell Black. So she gets to the house, and all she sees, it just looks like a normal little home. So she goes in. Dante's in there. He takes her to where all the action is. Luca and Nico have their guns on Carlos' men and him. And then before you know it, Carlos grabs the gun that he had apparently in his waist, and he grabbed her at the same time, and he put the gun to her head. That's wild. I mean, oh my gosh. So then all of a sudden the men, and what looked like a few minutes later, because like they're going back and forth trying to figure out, Nico is trying to figure out what to do. Like, if he does this will happen. If he does it. So he's trying to run through all these scenarios, trying to do something that won't get her taken out, Then these men bust in with these, what look like SWAT vests. It's Pharrell Black. And they're like shooting everywhere, and they hit Dante. Carlos walks back with Angel, but he still has the gun to her head. So then Nico took the shot, hit Carlos right in the forehead. So at the funeral, her and David basically talk and say they never really knew their father. So Nico shows up in the background after the funeral was over, and Dave was like, you want me to handle it? She's like, no, let me just go talk to him. So he tells her he's sorry for her loss and that he really didn't want to do that, but he just couldn't risk him taking her out. So she still doesn't think her father would have offed her, but I think that's just her way of coping with everything. They say goodbye, and that's the end. Oh, so much drama in this book. I loved it. Now, I really, that has got to be her reasoning for thinking that. It's got to be just a coping mechanism, because there's no way you can think he was not going to hurt you. When all the guns were on him, he grabbed you and put a gun in your head because he saw that this man cares for her, so he's not going to let anything happen to her. Like, that's some, that was awful. But I really like this this book. I like their intensity, of course. I always like when it's always nice. Just, I don't know, it's honest emotion, and I like that. I really do. What did you guys think of this? Let me know in the comment section. Let me know in the discussion board what you guys think. The next book in this series is called Fearless. So we're going to dive into that one next week. Thank you all so much for your support. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, there will be a link down below to purchase one. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.